Now CBS News correspondent David Martin on assignment for 60 Minutes.
The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter is the Pentagon's newest warplane and its most expensive weapon system ever. Nearly $400 billion to buy 2,400 aircraft. To put that in perspective, that's about twice as much as it cost to put a man on the moon. This at a time when the White House and Congress are fighting over ways to reduce the federal deficit, and cuts in defense spending are forcing the Pentagon to shrink the size of the military. The Air Force, Navy, and Marines are all counting on the F-35 to replace the warplanes they're flying today. If it performs as advertised, the F-35 will enable U.S. pilots to control the skies in any future conflict against the likes of China or Russia. But the F-35 has not performed as advertised. It's 7 years behind schedule and $163 billion over budget. Or, as the man in charge of the F-35 told us, basically the program ran itself off the rails.
The story will continue in a moment.
Morning. Lieutenant General Chris Bogdan is the man in charge of the F-35, and every morning starts with problems that have to be dealt with ASAP. This morning, it's a valve that's been installed backwards and has to be replaced.
How long does it take?
It's about a 7-day operation.
Okay. And now you know what I'm going to say next.
Yes,
what am I going to say next?
You're going to say we're not going to pay for it.
That's right. We're not going to pay for it. Long gone is the time where we will continue to pay for mistake after mistake after mistake.
When Bogdan took over the F-35 program a year ago, it was behind schedule, over budget, and relations with the plane's manufacturer, Lockheed Martin, bordered on dysfunctional.
How would you characterize the relationship between the Pentagon and Lockheed Martin?
I'm on record after being in the job for only a month, standing up and saying it was the worst relationship I had seen in my acquisition career.
These planes, coming off the Lockheed Martin assembly line in Fort Worth, cost $115 million apiece. A price tag Bogdan has to drastically reduce if the Pentagon can ever afford to buy the 2,400 planes it wants.
I know where every single airplane in the production line is on any given day. You know why that's important? Because Lockheed Martin doesn't get paid their profit unless each and every airplane meets each station on time with the right quality.
So if this plane doesn't get from that station to this station
on time with the right quality, they're going to lose some of their fee. You got to perform to make your profit.
They must love you at Lockheed Martin.
I try and be fair, David, and if they want what I call winner's profit, they have to act like and perform like winners, and that's fair.
Although the F-35 won't begin to enter service until next year at the earliest, pilots are already conducting test flights and training missions at bases in California, Florida, Maryland, Arizona, and Nevada. It's supposed to replace virtually all the jet fighters in the United States military. There's one model for the Air Force, another for the Navy designed to catapult off an aircraft carrier, and a third for the Marines, which seems to defy gravity by coming to a dead stop in midair and landing on a dime.
This is a fighter that has amazing capabilities in a lot of ways.
Lieutenant Colonel David Burke says there's no comparison between the F-35 and today's jet fighter.
I'm telling you, having flown those other airplanes, it's not even close at how good this airplane is and what this airplane will do for us.
We have planes that are as fast as this.
You bet.
And can maneuver just as sharply as this one.
Sure.
So why isn't that good enough?
Those are metrics of a bygone era. Those are ways to validate or value an airplane that just don't apply anymore.
You can see from its angled lines the F-35 is a stealth aircraft designed to evade enemy radars. What you can't see is the 24 million lines of software code which turn it into a flying computer. That's what makes this plane such a big deal.
The biggest big deal is the information that this airplane gathers and processes and gives to me as a pilot. It's very difficult to overstate how significant of an advancement this airplane is over anything that's flying right now.
Without the F-35, says Air Force Chief General Mark Welch, the U.S. could lose its ability to control the air in future conflicts.
Air superiority is not a given, Dave. It never has been. And if we can't provide it, everything we do on the ground and at sea will have to change.
Today's enemies, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, pose no threat to American jets. But Welch is worried about more powerful rivals.
We're not the only ones who understand that going to this next generation of capability in a fighter aircraft is critical to survive in the future of battle space. And so others are going, notably now the Chinese, the Russians, and we'll see more of that in the future.
And this is what the competition looks like. The Russian T-50 and China's J-20 stealth fighter. According to Welch, they are more than a match for today's fighters.
If you take any older fighter, like our existing aircraft, and you put it nose to nose in a contested environment with a newer fighter, it will die.
And it will die because?
It will die before it even knows it's in a fight.
In aerial combat, the plane that shoots first wins. So it all comes down to detecting the enemy before he detects you. The F-35's combination of information technology and stealth would give American pilots what Marine Lieutenant General Robert Schmidl describes as an astounding advantage in combat.
I shouldn't get into the exact ranges because those ranges are classified, but what I can tell you is that the range at which you can detect the enemy, and as opposed to when he can detect you, can be as much as 10 times further, when you'll see him before he'll ever see you, and down to 5 times.
I want to nail this down here.
Okay.
If the F-35 was going up against another stealth aircraft of the kind that other countries are working on today, it would be able still to detect that aircraft at 5 to 10 times the range.
You would be safe in assuming that you could detect that airplane at considerably longer distances than that airplane could detect you.
The F-35's radars, cameras, and antennas would scan for 360 degrees around the plane, searching for threats and projecting, for example, the altitude and speed of an enemy aircraft onto the visor of a helmet custom fitted to each pilot's head. It is so top secret, no one without a security clearance has ever been allowed to see what it can do.
If you want to head up to my office, come on up.
Until Lockheed Martin's chief F-35 test pilot, Alan Norman, took us into the cockpit for a first-hand look.
So if you put that over your face, do you see the
That blindfold is to make sure I can see only what cameras located in different parts of the plane project onto the visor.
So you're looking through the eyeballs of the airplane right now. And you can even look down below the airplane. So you're looking actually through the structure of the airplane right now.
We've positioned 60 Minutes cameraman Tom Rapier underneath the plane so we can test the system. So now I look, and there's Tom Rapier, and he's giving me one finger up.
You're the only person in the world that can see him with that imagery right now.
We're not allowed to show you what's on the visor because much of it is still classified. But wherever I turn my head, I can see what's out there.
So there's a lot riding on that helmet, David. There's no doubt.
How much does it cost?
The helmet itself, plus the computer system that is used to make the helmet work, is more than $500,000.
But there have been problems with the helmet, and when we visited the Marine Corps station in Yuma, Arizona, a malfunction caused a scheduled flight to be scrubbed. In fact, on any given day, more than half the F-35s on the flight line are liable to be down for maintenance or repairs. The bugs and glitches in the plane first reveal themselves in testing at Edwards Air Force Base in California, where every test flight is monitored and recorded as if it were a space flight.
And just for 21, squawk 0035.
The plane has to go through 56,000 separate tests. Everything from making sure a bomb will fall out of the bomb bay to seeing what happens when it is dropped at supersonic speeds.
Of course, you never like to lose an aircraft.
Colonel Rod Kregier runs the test program.
You're taking an aircraft that's unknown and you're trying to determine, does it do what we paid the contractor to make it do? Does it go to the altitudes, the airspeeds? Can it drop the right weapons? We're trying to get all that stuff done before we release it for the warfighter so that they can actually use it in combat.
So are you basically the guy that has to deliver the bad news about the plane?
Sometimes it's hard to tell folks that their baby is ugly, but you have to do it because if you don't get it done, who else is going to do it?
A number of surprisingly basic defects have been uncovered. The F-35 was restricted from flying at night because the wingtip lights shaped to preserve the plane's stealth contours, did not meet FAA standards.
When you hear something like that, you just kind of want to hit your head like this and go, multi-billion-dollar airplane, wingtip lights, come on.
And then there are the tires, which have to be tough enough to withstand a conventional landing and bouncy enough to handle a vertical landing.
We found out that the tires were wearing out 2, 3, 4 times faster than expected. Tires.
Tires aren't rocket science. We ought to be able to figure out how to do tires on a multi-billion-dollar, highly advanced fighter.
Lieutenant General Schmidl remembers the day one of the planes delivered to the Marines had gaps in its stealth coating.
They sent me the pictures within half an hour of the thing landing, and I then sent them on to Lockheed Martin and said, so talk to me.
I got a feeling you said more than just talk to me. Did you say what the hell?
You know, Marines tend to be relatively direct in the way that we try to help people understand what our particular concerns are.
Executives at Lockheed Martin declined our request for an interview and instead sent us this email saying in part, "We recognize the program has had developmental and cost challenges, and we are working with our customers, partners, and suppliers to address these challenges." That stealth coating was repaired and the problem with the running lights fixed, but so far, not the tires. With about 35 planes a year coming off the Lockheed Martin assembly line, it seems awfully late to be discovering such basic flaws. That's because early in the program, the Pentagon counted on computer modeling and simulators to take the place of old-fashioned flight testing.
An old adage in this business is you should fly before you buy. Make sure the design is stable and that things work before you actually go into production.
Frank Kendall is the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, the Pentagon's chief weapons buyer.
We started buying airplanes a good year before we started flight testing.
So you buy before you fly.
In that case, yes.
Just saying it, that doesn't sound like a good idea.
I refer to that decision as acquisition malpractice.
This May 2010 Pentagon memo detailed the flawed assumptions, unrealistic estimates, and a general reluctance to accept unfavorable information that put the program 7 years behind schedule and more than $160 billion over budget. To stop the bleeding, Kendall pumped an extra $4.6 billion into flight testing and froze production.
We need to face the truth in this business. We need to understand what works and what doesn't.
Is the F-35 program now under control?
Yes, it is.
Shortly after he spoke with us, Kendall issued this memo stating progress is sufficient to increase production next year. But he warned the plane's software is behind schedule and reliability is not growing at an acceptable rate. Still, the Pentagon plans to buy as many as 100 F-35s a year by 2018.
Has the F-35 program passed the point of no return?
I don't see any scenario where we're walking back away from this program.
So the American taxpayer is going to buy this airplane?
I would tell you we're going to buy a lot of these airplanes.